Yes. You're listening to the Ghostwriter podcast on 1020 Radio. You can listen to previous episodes at mandomhood.com/ghostwriter. My name's Elias, and today I'm joined by a very special guest who goes by the name of Will Taylor, aka Prince Taylor.
Yeah.
What are we going with today?
We're going with Will today. We're going with
Okay.
Will, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Casual.
Will is a very talented multidisciplinary artist. One of his latest audio projects, Black Boys Cry, was featured in the BBC New Creatives programme. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Will's also on the panel for the Man Them Don't Cry event next week at the Barbican. So very excited to have him on for that.
Love, man.
How you doing today, Will? You good?
Yeah, we're good, man. Another rainy Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
But all is good. All is good, man.
Yeah, it's deep. And we were just talking before about the fight getting cancelled and that, and a little bit about boxing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about kind of like how you got into boxing, why you do it, and that kind of thing. That'd be interesting to know.
That's mad.
And if it at all is related to the stuff you've done around Black Boys Cry and male mental health and things like that.
Yeah. It's mad because it's a series of events, do you know what I mean? First thing, like, I have to hail up my dad, first of all, because growing up as a kid, it was football and boxing. That was it. He had, like, all the legendary fights recorded on VHS, and he had all the legendary football matches recorded on VHS as well. So whenever I was bored, I just had an archive of, like, legendary fights to look through. Naturally, as a parent, he didn't want his kid fighting, so he was like, football's the one. And did that for years, got injured, and then basically didn't have any sort of exercise or fitness outlet. And then I was like trying to get back on my fitness hype, and then one morning, so I used to work at Size in the city centre, and I was like running that place, and we always have like bare shit with deliveries, man. It's always like tough trying to get them in because there's so many rules that you have to like follow. And this one morning we was trying to get delivery in around the front, which is kind of like sacrilege, but we didn't have a choice. And so I was out the front in the loading bay holding it, like just telling drivers, anyone who wanted to park, that they had to roll past because we got a truck coming. And this guy pulled up in some van and literally pressed the van up against me. And I was like, yo, what are you doing? And he was just like, oh, I'm going Greg's, innit? And I was just like, look, my van is right behind you, man. Like, please, can you move? And then he just started squaring up, like effing and blinding, this and that. And I was like, cuz, all for a coffee and a sausage roll. And then he was just, and he was like this and that. So then I was just like, do you know what, man? You're a piece of shit, bro. Like, I can't even get angry at you. I was literally just like, you're a piece of shit. And I moved on. And so he jumps out of the car and squared up at me. And he gets out of the car. He's some like 18, 19 stone, like unit. He's like a rock. So then he was like, oh, and I turned around and he squared up to me. And in that moment, I was just like, wow. I was like, there's no way I can defend myself. Like, if this guy wanted to try something, I didn't know how to hold myself to give myself the best chance of either, like, getting out of the way or sparking him one time, making sure that the thing was over.
Yeah.
So that was it. It was like that moment I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go learn self-defense, first of all. So I was going to this gym and I just sat there for like a couple of weeks and I just sit in all of the classes, wouldn't take part or nothing. I just wanted to watch how they went about their business. I went to a couple other gyms as well, but I really liked this one, Sweatbox. And then boom, that was it. Like, put the gloves on and it all came back. I was just like, oh yeah, man, I love this. Like, I watch boxing all the time. I watch all the big fights all the time. Parents ain't around to say no. So I just, got straight into it. And like a duck to water, man, it just became that thing. Psychologically, it helped. It was like naturally a release in terms of discipline as well, having that like what amassed to about 6 to 7 hours a week where you can't think of anything else, because when you're boxing, the thing is like hit and don't get hit, so all your focus is on who's in front of you and you have to figure out this puzzle. If you're distracted thinking about other things, you're going to get banged. Do you know what I mean? So it was like real nice and it was like really meditative for me. And then in that space as well, because we got like women fighters and everything as well, you just become real humble. And you very quickly learn it's all about respect, self-respect, respect for whichever opponent you're facing. Because you don't know what skill level they have. Some people walk into the gym and you would not think they're a bad boy black belt jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I'm saying? So then in that sense, you're walking around town, you never want to start nothing. Like that whole hyper masculine thing is all dependent on the cultures around the gyms, you know what I mean? And this gym's got a very good culture. So I would never pick a fight. If someone's fighting, the first thing I want to do is stop it, because you're like in that space, you see the damage immediately. Even within a safe, confined environment, you can see the damage of collecting a bang to the head to the right place, even with gloves on. People out here fighting fists, innit? So yeah, in that respect, I've had to learn to have like bare respect for myself, understanding what my body can and can't do, how to push it through the limits, and respect for everybody else fundamentally as well, man. It's real humbling.
That's really interesting. So like, because you do hear that self-defense helps. Like you find that a lot of people who are like, you know, do martial arts and stuff are actually quite like calm, composed people, innit? Like they don't their tempers don't flare easily, and I think that's a really interesting thing. Have you found that it's affected you in that way at all?
Yeah, in a big way, man. On like one incident, I've so like my group of friends, yeah, always like lovers, not fighters. You know what I'm saying? Unless you disrespect the code, and even then, if someone gets into a swingers, the rest of the team is just figuring out when's the right time to break it up. No one's jumping in and throwing stuff. So I was like, last year at St. Paul's Carnival was like the first time I'd seen a fight since I started boxing, and it was like these five guys jumping this one kid. And like you got to think, St. Paul's Carnival, by like just around the corner walking up past the Kota, at this point there was like hundreds of people around and everyone was just watching. And I was just like we have no idea where this could go. Like the fight's won, it's 5 versus 1. Like the fight's over, it's not even a contest. Someone stop this before person gets really badly hurt. All of those thoughts happened within about 5 seconds in my head. The next thing I knew, I was in there, like, just pulling guys off. Like, first thing I did was a risk assessment. I was like, God forbid there's any knives in here. I saw one kid who was throwing his punches with terrible techers. So I was like, bare scared that he had a knife. And it's because I was just like, in that risk assessment, I was like, if he's got a knife, then I'm just going to knock him out. Because I can't see any other knives. He's the only one who looks like they got one. I don't want him to have a chance to actually get up. And if he did have a knife, man, like this is a really sad situation because he threw about 5 blows without being stopped. So I was like, all right, cool. That's my priority. So jumped straight in, whipped him off, and then like there was this other guy who was like just wailing in on the guy, and I pulled him off, and then he squares up to me and was just like, no, this and that. And in that moment, I was just like, not me. And then he calmed down, and I was like, all my boys are just like, fam, like, you always have a habit of doing that shit, man. Like, be careful, innit? And I was like, I don't know what happened. I didn't want to fight. I see it too much, and I don't want to be witness to someone actually getting like severely damaged potentially for the rest of their life. So in that respect, yeah, in those live situations, much more calm, humble. But in my day to day as well, think about that analogy of having a puzzle to like figure out, and if you don't figure out the puzzle, it punches you in the face. Like boxing's been a real metaphor for life for me, in that in those live situations, I don't have time to think. I have to rely on what I know and try to learn something new to survive. So when I'm faced with a hurdle in real life, I'm like, you got time. You actually got loads of time. You're not going to get sparked in the face immediately. So settle, gather yourself, think about what your options are, speak to people about it. Like in a ring, you got your coach. You're taking in information. So in real life, it's kind of like, actually slow down a second, see what your real options are, what you can do something about, and the things you can't do anything about, let it slide, man. And along with other things over my life in that period of time, boxing definitely like helped instill a sense of calm and peace, yeah.
And where do you think that protective instinct comes from?
Oh, man.
Because it takes bravery to jump in and help someone you don't even know.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I've always been sort of like an uncle in my friendship groups, you know. Yeah, man. It takes a lot to for me to turn around and say that I wish you the worst. You get me? I don't wish anyone any ill health or anything like that. So seeing that kind of shit, I just don't like seeing stuff that's unfair. Forgive my language, man. If it's like, yeah,
Go ahead, bro.
it's calm. I just don't like seeing anything that's unfair. Do you know what I mean? Like, I appreciate just and justice, like just outcomes and justice to the fullest extent, because life is full of injustices. You know what I'm saying? So when I see them things, when I see them situations, something in my guts, I just hope if someone saw me in that situation, they do me a blessing of helping me get out of it. So we're all in this together, man. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to see anyone go through anything that could ruin their lives, and the perpetrators as well, man. You have no idea whether or not my guy wants to press charges or something, and then that's you and your whole family dragged into this world of absolute pain for some impulsive reaction that you could have patterned up a different way.
Yeah, man, it's deep, and like you say, you would want someone to do the same to you, innit?
Word.
Yeah, I was thinking of a personal incident with me one time, and I was very grateful that someone jumped in to help. But yeah, so I think you've got a very interesting upbringing, Will, as well, and I think it'd be really interesting if you talk a little bit about that, and like, you know, how you started off in London and the school you went to and stuff. It'd be really interesting to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Like, what? Early 90s, 1991. Born in London, grew up in South London. My parents moved me to Ghana for a year when I was about 3 years old, which was like very influential. Despite the fact I can't remember much, the memories I do have are incredibly poignant. You know what I mean? And then at the age of 11, so came back to London at the age of 4, and then went through the education system there. And one of the things my parents said was, when I got back, because I was like bilingual, it was difficult for me to make friends, because sometimes I'd be speaking English and then I'd just move straight into Tree. And the kids were just like bare confused and were just like, well, yeah, whatever. So the teachers were just like, he really needs to work on his English. Like, we should focus on that. So my parents started speaking Ga and Tree with me, which is unfortunately why I can't really speak the language now. And then got sent to a boarding school near Brighton, in a town called Horsham, from the age of 11 till 18. And that was a really fascinating experience, man. Something I was grateful for. At the time, obviously, you can't really see what the benefits of that experience are going to be, but over that like course of 7 years, the lessons I've learned that I've been able to actually process in my adult life and help me live a much better life, one that I want for myself, you know, and give me the ability to actually go and chase things and the kind of drive and the discipline to set things in motion and ensure that we're like following our ambitions and aspirations safely as well as like with tenacity, you know. And it, like, that 7 years of that school was mad, because our year group, I would say, was responsible for pretty much a cultural revolution, man. We got there and there were some very archaic rules still in place, man. Stuff that people were doing from the like 50s, stuff that people were doing post-war, bro. Certain like rules and like unsaid things that you had to follow. And our year was the first year that actually came out and was just like not doing it. People were like, what?
And do you want to give a bit of a background to the school itself?
Yeah. So the school's called Christ Hospital. Yeah, so it's like very traditional, like very like middle class British heritage. It was founded by Edward V, who was one of Henry VIII's sons. And he created the school because a couple months before he died, he went walking around central London and saw loads of kids who looked like him living in poverty, and he was just like, this isn't fair, I'm not going to have it. So I'm going to charter this school to take all of the homeless kids out from the city centre, put them into education, give them food and board, and protect them, you know what I'm saying? Protect the next generations coming through. So that school, like, whilst we was there, celebrated its 450th birthday. It started off in central London and then moved to this place, Horsham. And a whole bunch of us got into that school off the back of that principle, you know. We couldn't afford the fees to go there. they obviously had some very high paying students. And all of us got in on some sort of scholarship, which was a blessing because it meant that there was a subculture within the space, man. You had loads of young kids coming from impoverished parts of London, mixed heritage, black, white, Asian, like the whole thing. So you kind of like bought into this collective identity. And that led to another thing, man. Realizing what race was after we left was a tricky thing because we spent 7 years thinking actually now we're children of the earth as opposed to children from this heritage or this ethnicity, so on and so forth. Christ Hospital had just the maddest thing about it was the uniform. It was very beautiful, like buildings and whatnot, very scenic, like often compared to Hogwarts. But we had this mad uniform, man. Google it because I'm not going to describe it. Like, it's a bit mad. And yeah, man, we was there. So 2002 to 2009. So we was there during the advent of grime. So you had kids coming from north, south, east, west London, like stone's throw away from this culture. Every time we'd go home, we would like throw them straight back into this culture. And then we'd leave it and then come straight back into this middle class culture. And obviously, we was all like writing bars, spitting bars, like, but it just looked weird, you know, like kids in this middle class environment actually shelling. Like there was some really talented brothers in that situation, you know. And yeah, it was just mad because at that moment, that's when the kind of like identity crisis begins. You're like, this is me. And even in that space, like the impoverished kids held all the cultural capital, man. If I'm gonna be honest with you, I'd respect anyone from that space who challenges that, and I'd like to have a conversation about it. But for real, like ethnic minorities held cultural capital. So by the time we left, everything had turned upside down, man. Like their rules and approach to gender performance had changed a lot. Like their rules and approach to sexual orientation had changed a lot. To racism had changed a lot. Like, and as a result, like our year group, as any year group in that space does, like they have like undeniable bond. But our year group has like a really peculiar bond. I'm gonna say that, like, because we fought for so much and we ended up fighting each other at times because we were like trying to work out all of these programming and conditioning that we'd been like subject to, and that we were seeing being represented all around the world, and that we were fighting so hard to overcome. That it's kind of like we love each other, like undeniably, but for a lot of us, it's like too difficult to keep up contact with everyone. Do you know what I'm saying? Despite having lived with each other for 7 years, there's a element of guilt somewhat attached to all of us, but everyone's doing the best they can. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, that's what makes you happy. Like when you do check in with someone, if they're thriving, if they're working hard or doing their best to make the best out of their situation, and like doing it with a collective spirit. That's one of the big things that's been left behind for me from that school, that experience, yeah.
And what kind of rules did you end up changing?
Fam.
Just as one as an example.
Yo, mad ones like, oh, bro, like I'm trying to say stuff that's not incriminating. And that's what it is. In them cultures, like it's mad. Like, there was times where, like, there were fun little games at the time, but some people would take it too far, and like one person would get subject to bullying. Do you know what I mean? Like little things where people would like, you used to get like this tuck box where you could like bring back like munch from home, and it got locked up and stuff, and people would genuinely just like just break your shit open and like take everything. And that kind of thing happens everywhere, innit? But then you'd have like, it was like clockwork. It got to a point where it was like clockwork, and it was just like, no, every time, boom, you're getting licked, you're getting rinsed.
It's like older year groups.
Yeah. Stuff like you had to like do certain, like play certain games where they'd come, like you'd be on your break and you'd be like having toast and milk and that, and they just come and take it after you'd prepped it and everything. like having sometimes they just literally because they were so much bigger than us at times they'd like pick you up and just hang you on a coat peg.
Mad.
And then everyone would go to lessons and you'd actually be stuck there on a coat peg hoping that someone walked past and helped you like figure it out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like all of that time. It's mad. You can laugh at it, innit? But at the time,
It's deep. No, like schools that I had a mate I got a mate who went to Harrow and
okay,
the fuckeries that go on at some of them schools, bruv.
yeah.
That breed the fucking Boris Johnsons and the David Cameron cunts, man.
Bruv, that's it. Like that's it. And it's weird because you love half of these guys as much as you like despise them in that moment in time, you know. But yeah, we thought that. Like I just remember clearly, like it was one point where like someone was like saying something and he was like making a comment on our culture, my culture, and then he said something derogative and he moved from culture to race, and I was just like, don't chat about me like that. And he was basically like, what you gonna do? Like I'm older than you, bruv. And I was like, oh, it's like that. So I was just like, all right, naturally I went and spoke to the like sixth formers and I was just like, yo boys, man, like for real, I know man snitching and that, but my guy's actually walking around, yeah, saying this type of stuff about us, bro. Like, and it really upset me because it was like directed at me. Do you know what I'm saying? And then I just remember after, like in a rugby game, he got given a real hard time. Like they battered him in a rugby game, and then on the way home, a few of them jumped him, and that was that. Like, not just him, the whole year group, all of those boys knew, don't comment on anyone's race ever again. If you want to get involved, you know what I'm saying? But don't try and culturally appropriate our shit and then feel like you can say whatever you want to us. And it was little things like that, you know? Because when we're spraying bars in the like playground and that, they would all come and watch and get impressed. And then you'd move to another space and there'd be no merit for your talent or nothing. They just try to batter you and all of that. It was weird, man. It was weird, but it's character building somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Would you like to talk a little bit about the Black Boys Cry project and explore that? Because it's a very powerful project, and I think it's been received with a lot of praise. So it'd be really interesting to know your process behind that.
Yeah, that's appreciated, man. Anytime someone says that they like enjoy listening to that stuff, man, it means a lot because that project is much bigger than me. Like, I'm fortunate enough for it to be my brainchild, but it was something that I believe we needed as a society, man, because the framework of it is very applicable to all cultures, creeds, like, yeah, just in general. So that project was born out of the fact that firstly I studied film and I realized I can't make films. I was just not visually inclined to be able to shoot something. The way I like to tell my stories requires like total audience participation. So I like to shoot something in a way that the kind of like audience has to build the rest of the scene themselves, and then I build the scene with them, and then I give them the overall scene. And it was just like not a conducive way of being able to tell a story that was like engrossing. With audio, I found that I could do that. I could just give a description and then let the audience member kind of build that world for themselves, you know. But that's more like on a technical tangent. In terms of like the actual project and its genesis, it was born out of me I was doing therapy for a year. I got into a point where I knew that I wanted to make a career change. I was carrying bare stuff from my childhood like around with me, and it was affecting my relationships and affecting my sense of self as well. And at that point, I was just like, all right, cool, this is an option for me to take to try and sort this stuff out. And during that process, like I'm obviously like doing the deep rooted work, and I'm just trying to get through my day to day and stuff. But I was fortunate enough to have boys around me who would give me the space to like explore some of the stuff we did in the sessions, and talk about it, and started to listen to them, like started to hear them comment on how much of a more rounded person I was. And that means a lot coming from boys you live with, do you know what I'm saying? When they see you at your best and see you at your worst, you know, and they also want so much for you. And then over that period of time, my boys all went through a whole heap of shit as well. And it became evident that we were really supporting each other. Like that period of 18 months, like we were really holding and carrying each other through some like really difficult life situations, man. It was quite unreal, bro. I was saying to someone the other day, man, there was like a 5-6 week period over that summer where pretty much every morning, like the man then would be getting ready for work, and one of them would be telling the others a story about how they'd been crying or something, like just feeling that kind of pain. And like we were so appreciative for each other, giving each other the space, that I was just like, I'm fortunate, man. Like I'm so lucky because I got these guys who are willing to hear me, like, and legitimize my experiences and check me when necessary as well, which is incredibly important. I was just like, imagine how many other people could do with that, like do with an outlet to have their experience legitimized. These stories aren't being heard, and we're constantly being told like, oh, just get over it, brush it over, this and that. So then you don't feel like you got an agency to talk about it to someone. And if you don't practice talking about it, when you get to a point where you can, you ain't got the language to speak about how you're really feeling. So I was just like, this is what I've been working on. I've been working on language and helping myself figure out what my emotions are so I know how to react to them when they spring up. And I was like, I want to offer this to other people. So I was like, with Black Boys Cry, like naturally I'm surrounded by a lot of black people, just from the type of stuff that I like to go to, listen to, the cultural things that like draw my attention, the networks I find myself in. And I was just like, nah, like black masculinity is in a weird place right now where like black men are only celebrated when there's an Instagram post of a good black father. And it's like, oh, how rare this is. And it's like, it's not a rarity. It just doesn't get seen. You see what I'm saying? Or doesn't get spoken about. We're always either like roadmen, athletes, entertainers. Like the odd one comes through and they're like an academic or a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. But there's too much pressure. Like it's hard for people to just be themselves, in their full complexity. So I was like, all right, cool. I want to offer people a chance to express these things, legitimize these experiences that they have as black men, like dealing with race and what was a shift in perception of masculinity in light of the Me Too movement. And what I wanted to do is create an archive, man. I feel like these stories need to be heard. So if I can continue to build these stories, I'm lending the work and these experiences to an archive like of black British history that often that is impossible to find, legitimate black British history where the complexities of one's experience are respected as well as like the context of one's experience, So yeah, that's where it started, man.
Cool. And interestingly, you mentioned like therapy. You mentioned therapy at the start.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because I don't know many men who've had therapy or whatever. I think it's one of these taboo things. And I think as well, men have probably a built-in kind of self-reliance thing going on. So they don't want someone else to have to deal with their shit or help with their issues. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear how you made that step to actually opening up and seeking help.
Oh, wow. It was like...
if you're comfortable going into it, obviously.
Obviously, like, it was... So I mentioned the fact that I was going through this career change. I've been managing a shoe shop for a few years at this point, and I knew I'd gotten everything I could get out of that company. So the next thing was like making sure the next career step I took was into the creative industry. But I was trying to deal with like the pressure of moving into a freelance game when I was so used to having like a regular, consistent income. Like there was a whole heap of family stuff going on as well. Like a whole like Pandora's box basically got open for my family over that period of time. I had a younger brother who was dealing with severe mental health stuff as well. And parents who are completely inexperienced in how to deal with and manage that kind of situation. Like all of that stuff, like watching my parents' mental health deteriorate, knowing that I couldn't rely on them for support. My sister's mental health was deteriorating as well because she didn't have the support she needed. It was clear that as the older brother, you have to do something. and you don't have the strength to do what you're required to do right now. And it's not your brethren's responsibility to fix that. Like, you have to take that step yourself to fix it. And the key thing for me was like realizing and recognizing what was actually happening to me, like hormonally and emotionally. You know, like I had this massive thing with. I remember chatting to my therapist, and we had this massive thing where I was just like, I don't have the right as a black guy to be angry. Like, walking down the road, if someone does me dirty, man, I can't respond in a natural way because I would get typecast. I'd get put into a box of like, oh, there you go, classic angry black boy, no reason to be angry. Someone could have said something like heinous to me, and I wouldn't have been able to justify my reaction to whatever they had done. You know what I was saying? So I was chatting to her about this, and she was just like giving me all of these options, and I was like, please, like, I really appreciate what you're saying, but recognize you're giving me these options as a white woman. So these things will work for you. These things don't work for me, man. I wouldn't be here if I didn't try them. Do you know what I'm saying? And over the next couple of sessions, we had like a wonderful conversation around that issue, you know, and she expressed to me that she'd learned a lot from that. She hadn't been challenged like that in her professional work before. So it made her realize that what we started to do was center my focus on my embodied physiological reactions, as opposed to focusing on some sort of outlet or outcome for my emotions, and that type of stuff, man. And it was like putting the priority on figuring that kind of stuff out at that moment in time, where I was like, I felt like I was in dire straits, you know. I knew I wasn't going to do anything stupid, but I couldn't be sure. I think that was it. I was just like, I couldn't be sure. I'd wake up one day and think, fuck it, let me just like jeopardize the whole thing, you know, like sabotage the whole thing. So that was the moment where I was just like, all right, cool, no, let's do something. We're going to do something about this. And yeah, like continue to be that person who offers help to my community as well. Because that was something I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just take away. Like, people would be like, like he's changed, he's not all right, this and that. And I know that that's who I want to be as well. So I had to figure out how to do that healthily and safely as well.
No, it's impressive, man. And I think as well, it's interesting that you've got that selfless nature to you, and you realize that your own mental health has a massive impact on other people. I think that's something personally for me, I've been, why I now want to take care of my mental health more is because of that responsibility element and the rub-on effect of the people around you. And you don't always think about that when you have your dark moments, because it, in a lot of ways, it's a very selfish thing, isn't it? Sometimes like self-loathing and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that actually considering the people around you is possibly one of the ways to help get out of them kind of holes. Do you feel like that's relevant to you a little bit, or?
Oh, definitely, man. Definitely. Because over that period of time, like, I was really heavily challenged, man, by the things I was seeing around me. Like, the phone calls I was getting from home. My parents were living in Newcastle. So that's like my mum, my dad, and my younger brother are living in Newcastle. So they're completely detached from their community. And knowing that they were out there on their own, like, my mum was struggling to find work or struggling to keep jobs simply because, like, her employers wouldn't respect the fact that she was dealing with racial discrimination from the kids that she was teaching, let alone the staff, you know. All of that kind of stuff I was just like, fuck, man, I've got to give these guys something to smile about, you know, like, and I know that this career change will give them stuff to smile about, but getting there is one thing. I want to be able to stay there and keep growing, you know. Like referring to that tree thing and that tree metaphor, but that was it. I was just like, I want to be there and be around for a long time and make a living and a life out of this stuff. So it was like seeing that in order to be able to do that properly and be the person that these people deserve, that I had been for them in some capacity before. These people deserve to have me firing on all cylinders and just being honest and straight and still being like driven to like fulfill my dreams. I was just like, nah, yeah, like it's essentially it's for me, but it's for me to be able to do what I do, which is a lot to do with doing stuff with and for other people. So
Yeah, and I know you kind of touched on it briefly, and I don't want to make you have to regurgitate it a million times, but I do think that it is quite a powerful metaphor that you've drafted up there, referring to the tree. And I think metaphors are just important for us as humans, man. They help us understand the world around us. So maybe if you could briefly just elaborate on how that tree metaphor specifically helps you.
yeah, man, it was big, and it like that metaphor came from listening to a series of like different talks and like just putting stuff together, you know, and then having a moment where I was just like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. Like, that's why Will's always been a guy who thinks too much. Pisces gangs also, it's that season. Like, overthinking everything. Like, that's a character trait that all of my nearest and dearest say about me, you know? And like, I'm like that because when I make a decision, I like to be sure about what it is I'm doing. Like, grew up in a situation where I couldn't be certain of anything, man. Like, whilst I was in that boarding school, my parents got made homeless twice. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I remember one day getting sent to school, knowing that my family didn't have anywhere to sleep that night. And they were just like, I got it. They were just like, yeah, send them off because it's one less person to think about in this situation. But it was torture. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't, like, do you know what I'm saying? So what I've like always craved in my life is some element of certainty and some element of solidarity. And knowing that I'm moving into this creative scene and seeing the kind of people around, that's where this like tree metaphor came, and it actually like solidified with me, because I was like, basically trying to be creative. Yeah, a lot of people can just pop in it. You see it all the time with social media and the internet. Someone just comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden they're this like viral, getting like $100,000, £100,000, multi-million-pound like sponsorship contracts and stuff like that sets them up to be able to go and do the thing that they want to do with their lives, you know. But now it's just like, how many of these people just vanish, you know? Like, what was the value of the thing they contributed in the long run? And I was just like, I don't want to see that for anyone that I love, and I don't want that for myself, you know. Like, and I remember one day standing at a flower bed in College Green, and I took a picture of it, and I was like, oh, these things are pretty, but they're going to be gone in a couple of months, you know? Like, it's such a shame. It's actually such a shame because they add so much to the environment, but it's never permanent, you know? And I was just like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be a flower. I don't want to like be pretty for a hot second. Someone could come pick me, or someone could come like trample over me, or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, cat could come take a shit or something like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because in that moment, all of that growth I've done counts for absolutely nothing, you know? But then I was just like, I was in that moment, I looked up, saw a tree, and I was like, yeah, but that tree's still here. That tree's still going to be there. It's going to take a lot to get rid of that tree as well. Like people are going to recognize when that tree is gone, and that's going to have a massive effect on the ecosystem, the environment, how people move around the space, you know? And I was just like, that's the kind of level of importance I want my work to have. That's the kind of value I want my work to have. I want it to be deep-rooted. Trees, deep-rooted, like eternally connected to the environment that they're around. So important for the world, with photosynthesis and the absorption of CO2, sorry, and all of those like scientific elements to it. But then also like in terms of like a human relationship or a sentient relationship with like plants and stuff like that. Like, people use trees to lean on. People use trees for shade. People use trees to play. People use trees to like cut branches to like build a little something. You know what I'm saying? Like people use trees to make a playhouse, like a tree house. You know, like people use trees to piss on if they need to. You get what I'm saying? And that's just people. We're not even talking about animals. You get me? Birds using trees to build their nest in. All the like insects and like all that type of stuff who use trees for like to home, like for a home and all of that type of stuff. And then I was just like, that's like the cultural and like emotional significance of the work that I want to do, man. I want people to be able to come and look at my work or or collaborate with me for any reason they need, but they know what they're coming for. You see what I'm saying? And I was just like, in order to be a tree, this shit's gonna take time. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, there was no pressure for me to like, oh, I have to do this now. I have to do this now. I have to do this now, man. Time will tell in and of itself. Tree spends like how many decades, like some trees hundreds of years growing, you know what I mean? And then it gets to that point where people walk past and recognize it for a tree, but they have no idea how much work it took to be that tree, you know, to grow through storms, you know what I'm saying? To keep growing through droughts. All of those things, like the resilience a tree holds and shows, and just being alive, you know, was so important for me. So when I recognized that kind of like longevity and like value in other people's work as well, I make it my prerogative to like scream about it. I'm like, hold tight, you, and the work you're doing, because it's so much more than you. Like you are a tree because people see you. If you were to ever leave the scene, people would feel it. You know, they'd be looking for a way to replace you, but they will never forget you. Do you see what I mean? And that for me is like incredibly important in everything that I do now moving forward.
Thank you for that, man. I know personally that metaphor is now going to stick with me for life, I think. So I appreciate that. What's your moon sign?
My moon sign, Capricorn.
Okay, because I found out mine the other day and it was Aries.
Aries,
yeah. So someone I was with was a bit it was funny because there's a guy in my office who's like obsessed with star signs. He was like, yeah, I want to stay out the way of Aries, like they're volatile. And I was like, okay, because it's weird, because
arms.
Yeah, because when you like look into it's weird because it's like you don't want to look too much into them because people start internalizing it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you start. It's like that affirmation thing, innit? And it's like, oh, like is it bullshit or is it just like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I know that you take that stuff maybe a bit more seriously than others, or maybe not. I don't know.
No, definitely. Like naturally, with a pinch of salt. I think that's almost like a default response to like zodiac and horoscopes and whatnot. There's like a culture built around it that made you believe that reading your horoscope could change your life. But effectively, it's almost like a journal, you know? So something would happen or something might be happening and you might check in with your horoscope and realize, oh, that is happening. Like, I don't have to do anything, but that is really what's going down right now. So I'll just live it out, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Someone told me the other day, Pisces are always thinking ahead. So I guess that's a good thing as well.
We try. We forget about the now sometimes. I think that's what Pisces, that's where we like, I have a habit of like thinking so far ahead that I forget what's going on around me now. And sometimes I'm responding to something that happened in the moment, but I'm responding with a view to what's
going to happen.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Rather than just being like, actually, no, let's respond to what's going on now.
It's very difficult, I think, to learn to live in the present, man. But I think being present is very key to contentment, you know what I mean, and peace, because like obviously a lot of like meditation and mindfulness is centered on that as well, and I think it's mad important.
That's why that tree thing was so important for me, just because that just reminded me, it was like, this is where I am, that's where I want to be, but it's not good. Like I'm not just going to get there and not have gone through all of the stages that get me there. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was just like, yeah, man, take time and the right things. You have the chance, like you'll be more aware to your surroundings and be able to like look at opportunities and be like, actually, that one is the one for me. Or that's not for me, but I know someone else actually who could really like develop whatever project or opportunity that is, or that it could really help them out, so on and so forth, man.
Have you ever tried meditation or?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. Does it work for you or?
It does. I'll be honest with you, man. I've always like, so my parents were like real spiritual. My parents are Christian, like Pentecostal Christian. Like, so I grew up around that, and then I moved away from faith for a while, for a long time, you know. I was just living effectively, and then over the last couple of years, my faith has become like a really important part of my life again. So I practice faith. I don't really like to ascribe to like religions specifically, because that's when the rules come in, and I feel like we're all looking. Ironically, I had a conversation about this yesterday. We're all looking for freedom, effectively, like freedom of self, freedom from self as well. It's freedom from like our environment to an extent too. And I say all of this because meditation has taken like loads of different forms for me over my life, and it's again like an incredible moment just to bring you to the here and now. There was like one story from last year that just put everything into. I was just like, all right, cool, here I am, because we had to do one audit, and my manager called me in for the audit. It was like very early in the morning. I'd set all my alarm. I'd pre-prepped my lunches the night before, everything, yeah. My alarm didn't go off that morning, so I ended up turning up to the audit like half an hour late. And I just felt so bad because like I trained this manager up so I could step down and give him the shot. And this was like an audit where he was relying on me, and I let him down. And I just felt horrible. So on the way home, I was just like, fuck it, you know what? I just started to pray. I was just praying on the way home. And my prayers like sound like a phone conversation. So to anyone, it just would have looked like I was on the phone. Had my headphones in and everything, was just chatting. And I was just like, I was just like, take the wheel, man. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm clearly, like, I'm still working on being present, but I'm overthinking these things right now. Please, I just want to see the next step, and I'll take it. You don't need to tell me what it is. I'll just take the next step. Just take my hand. It can be dark. It can be midnight. There could be nothing around. But as long as I can see the next step ahead of me, I won't even bother looking up, man. I just want to take that. And, like, whoever I was praying to was listening to me. Because literally, that was it. I was just like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll go wherever you want me to go. I don't care how far it is, yeah. That's it. Signing out. My phone rang. Bang. Like, I was just like, yeah, what's good? It was this lady called Lily Green. Like, it's just an incredible woman, man. And she'd been mentoring me over the course of a couple of years. And she was just like, do you want to go to New York? And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, yeah, we got a chance to send you to New York for a project we worked on. And I was just like, yeah. And she was like, you okay? And I was just like, yeah, I'll explain later. And I just put the phone down, and I looked up, and I was just like, really? Like, it could have been luck, of course, like all of those type of things, but I was just like, really? For my prayer to end at that point, and then for me to get a phone call saying, do you want to go to New York in 3 weeks? I was like, so I called her back later, and I was just like, I couldn't respond because I'd just come out of a prayer asking for just guidance and just to let me take any opportunity that came my way and not even think about it. Like, I've literally finished the prayer, and then you called me saying, do you want to go to New York? And I was just like, that shit's unreal. That shit right there was like way too unreal. And the like result of going to New York and being like responsible for exhibiting our project out there was like just pervade into every single part of my life and sense of self. It was such an important thing for me to do at that moment in time in my life. And a lot of things that happen and you can't make sense of, you can't control. And meditation and like spirituality and faith, I'm going to say meditation and faith more so, really helped me pattern myself up to stay present and deliver.
That's amazing, man. I'm sure we could have whole can of worms could have been opened by going into the religion talk, but yeah, man, thank you so much for talking to me today. Is there any last things that you might want to plug about things coming up and all of that?
I'm gonna say like keep an eye out for the talk you're hosting next week, man. If there's any way we can get a like recording or like any sort of like afters from that or any like projects that come off the back of that, man, just keep preying the Mandem and Mandem Hood website and like all of their platforms, because doing some good work there. I'm working on trying to get the rest of the series of podcasts out across this summer as well. I'm currently in a crisis of whether or not to like start marketing it separately or just market as myself on my personal Instagram page and all of that. So just keep a lookout for Black Boys Crime, man, because you guys are going to learn a whole lot about the society you walk around in. They're taken from real interviews with real people, telling real life experiences, man. And like, you can't do anything realer than that, for real. And yeah, socials are FK as Prince on Twitter and Pipe Dreams and Pirouettes on Instagram. So yeah, check man out.
Cool. Big ups. We'll put links to all of that as well.
Love, man.
Big ups, man. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Will.
Yo, thank you, man, for real life, man. Doing some real good work, man.
Appreciate that, bro. All right. Thank you for listening, guys. Peace out.